Ghost in the Files, a Helena Monroe story. Chapter 1. Helena Monroe stood at the threshold of her modest downtown office, observing the new client who had just walked in. The woman clutched her purse with trembling hands, eyes scanning the cluttered walls covered in old case notes and news clippings. Helena noticed a subtle twitch in the woman's lips. She was either anxious, terrified, or both. In Helena's line of work, such tension usually meant the start of a harrowing but necessary journey. "Miss Monroe?" the client asked, voice shaky. "Yes," Helena replied calmly, offering her a seat. "How can I help you?" The woman introduced herself as Caroline Hawthorne, a local teacher desperate to find her younger brother, Mark Hawthorne, who had gone missing 2 weeks ago. The police had initially listed Mark as a possible runaway. He had a history of minor troubles, like unpaid parking tickets and a few nights in jail for drunken brawls. But Caroline swore it didn't add up. Mark had recently turned his life around, working 2 jobs. He had big plans, including a scholarship for community college. Then, out of nowhere, he simply vanished. She slid a worn folder across Helena's desk. Inside were photographs of Mark, plus emails from the detective assigned to the case, cursory notes suggesting he'd made minimal progress. Helena's gut tightened as she flipped through them. Nothing about Mark's disappearance seemed routine. "What made you come to me?" Helena asked, sifting the clues. Caroline swallowed. "The detective in charge said there's no sign of foul play, that men in their 20s can vanish if they want to. But I know my brother. He wouldn't just disappear." She paused, eyes brimming with tears. "I read about you in an article. People say you notice things others miss." Flattery wasn't what motivated Helena, but something in Caroline's voice resonated. Helena's instincts told her to accept. "I'll help," Helena said. "I'll need everything you have on Mark, friends, co-workers, any detail that might lead us to him." Caroline brightened with hope. "I'll send more documents tonight." After her new client left, Helena settled at her desk. She often began by writing down preliminary thoughts, carefully listing each known fact. Mark Hawthorne, mid-20s, last seen leaving his part-time security job at a downtown office tower. No firm lead since then. A flicker of intuition sparked in Helena. She couldn't explain it fully, only that some gut feeling told her this case was deeper than a typical missing persons scenario. She made calls to her usual contacts at the precinct. Most were polite but unhelpful. The official stance remained that Mark might have run off. One old ally, Detective Oscar Reed, promised he'd keep an ear to the ground. Helena knew Oscar was trustworthy, but he'd be treading carefully. Her reputation as an unofficial meddler still lingered among many in law enforcement. 2 hours later, Helena locked up the office. Rain glazed the sidewalks as she navigated the city's neon-lit streets, heading home to her apartment. She'd moved to this place after leaving the FBI, wanting a quieter setting where she could operate independently. The Sarah Whitmore case still haunted her, where her correct instincts had been blatantly ignored until it was too late. She seldom spoke of that time, but it shaped every investigation she now undertook. Stepping inside her apartment, she dropped her keys on the kitchen table. A soft beep from her phone signaled an incoming email from Caroline. Helena opened the attachments. Notes about Mark's schedule, the name of his best friend, a co-worker's contact information. Nothing jumped out, until she saw a newspaper clipping about a 20-year-old cold homicide case found in Mark's folder. Strange. Why would Mark keep something like that? The murder victim was a woman named Evelyn Shaw, discovered near an abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of the city. The investigation had gone nowhere. The killer was never found. Helena skimmed the article. It didn't appear to have any direct connection to Mark, at least on the surface. A subtle tingle crept up Helena's spine. She reread the lines. Police suspect the victim's body was moved from the original crime scene. Evidence mysteriously vanished from the station archives. The case was never officially closed. Something about the phrase, "evidence vanished," made her skin prickle. She'd seen departmental mishandling before, but this seemed almost orchestrated. Her breath hitched. A fleeting wave of dizziness. A flash. Dark corridors, flickering lights. A presence behind her. She closed her eyes, inhaling slowly until the image slipped away. One of her flashes, those inexplicable glimpses she'd learned never to ignore. She opened her eyes, letting the last remnants of the vision dissolve. Why would Mark keep that article? Was it pure coincidence, or had he stumbled on something linking Evelyn Shaw's unsolved murder to his own life? Helena stared at the old clipping, her intuition whispering of a deeper connection. Mark Hawthorne's disappearance and a 20-year-old homicide might just be parallel lines. But if they intersected, Helena would find that crossroad, even if it led to confronting buried secrets within the police department, or entangled her once again with her old FBI ties. Chapter 2. Helena's first stop the next morning was Mark's apartment. Caroline had given her a spare key, though Helena felt uneasy entering someone's private space uninvited. The small, tidy studio overlooked a busy boulevard. Sunlight streamed through half-drawn curtains, illuminating an organized desk stacked with textbooks and notebooks. If Mark had truly fled, he hadn't taken much. His laptop, clothes, and personal effects all remained. A thorough investigator, Helena started with Mark's desk drawers. She flipped open notebooks filled with scribbled notes about scheduling, part-time gigs, and budgeting. Nothing suspicious, until she discovered a single white envelope labeled in pen. Shaw case. Inside were photocopied police documents, partial testimonies, and references to a detective Harland Gray. The handwriting on the notes suggested Mark had compiled his own analysis. It was incomplete, but thorough, as though he'd been investigating the same unsolved homicide Helena had read about. Her heart pounded. Why would a young man, working security, build a private file on a 20-year-old murder? The closer she looked, the more it resembled an amateur attempt at cold case research. He'd circled names, highlighted inconsistencies in the statements from old interviews. One margin note read, "Something's off testimony changed." Helena quickly used her phone to snap photos of everything. She'd look into Detective Harland Gray soon. This might be the key to understanding Mark's disappearance. Stepping away from the desk, she scanned the rest of the room. The closet was filled with standard clothes, some work uniforms. The small bathroom offered no clues aside from half-used toiletries. Before leaving, she spotted a calendar pinned on the refrigerator, the last date marked with a green circle. August 14th. The night he vanished. Next to it was the word factory, scribbled in bold. That had to be referencing the textile factory where Evelyn Shaw's body was discovered decades ago. Suddenly, Helena's phone buzzed. Detective Oscar Reed. "Monroe, you got a minute?" he asked. "Go ahead," Helena replied, stepping out onto the narrow landing for privacy. Oscar's voice dropped lower. "I'm calling off the record. Internal chatter says Harland Gray's name came up in a recent missing person discussion. Your case, presumably. But Gray's no longer on the force." Helena frowned. What happened to him? He left under a cloud years ago. Rumors about tampering with evidence, borderline obsession with an unsolved homicide. He refused to let it go. "Evelyn Shaw?" Helena guessed. Oscar exhaled. "That's the one. Gray wouldn't drop it. Claimed there was a cover-up. After enough run-ins with superiors, he was forced out. Heard he turned into some sort of recluse." Helena felt a chill. Mark was investigating the same cold case that destroyed Gray's career. "Where can I find him?" Oscar hesitated. "Last I heard, he holed up in a run-down cabin near Cedar Lake. But be careful, Helena. The man's a wild card." Helena ended the call and returned inside the apartment to double-check she hadn't missed anything. With the envelope of photocopied police files in her bag, she headed out. Her next stop would be a conversation with Harland Gray, if he was willing to talk. Outside, the city hummed with morning traffic. Helena slipped behind the wheel of her sedan, mind racing with possibilities. A missing man, an old detective who'd once believed in a conspiracy, and an unsolved murder. She tapped the steering wheel, recalling the fleeting vision from the night before. Dim corridors, a sense of being followed. As unsettling as these flashes were, they had guided her in the past, nudging her when logic alone wasn't enough. She texted Caroline. Found some info on Mark's interests. He was investigating something called the Shaw case, trying a lead soon. Caroline replied almost instantly. I had no idea. Please keep me updated. At a red light, Helena could practically feel the tension building. She recognized that ominous tingle in her gut, the creeping suspicion that Mark had uncovered something worth killing for. And if that was true, time was running out. A quick pit stop at her office gave Helena a chance to print a map to Cedar Lake. As she walked to the printer, she noticed an old photograph of herself pinned to the corkboard back from her FBI days. It was a stark reminder of the Sarah Whitmore debacle, the haunting guilt that still lingered. She pressed her lips together and brushed aside the memory. Dwelling on it would only slow her down. This time, if she sensed danger, she would act swiftly, never again letting the bureaucracy stand in her way. Before heading out, Helena locked up and glanced back at her desk, stacked high with Mark's file. She felt a renewed sense of purpose. The city's labyrinth of hidden motives and closed files had taken another victim, but she intended to pull him back from the brink, if he was still alive. For Mark Hawthorne's sake, she hoped he was. Chapter 3. The road to Cedar Lake was a winding ribbon of asphalt, flanked by towering pines. Helena found it oddly peaceful, despite the grim reason for her journey. She had contacted a local real estate agent who confirmed that an H. Gray owned a small cabin on the lake's northern shore. The place had no official phone listing or mailbox. Off the grid, just as Oscar described. She navigated rutted dirt roads until the cabin came into view. A single-story structure with peeling paint, perched beside still waters that reflected the overcast sky. Helena parked near a rusted pickup truck, heart pounding with anticipation. If Gray truly believed in a cover-up, he might be paranoid, or even hostile. Drawing a steadying breath, she approached the weather-beaten door and knocked. Footsteps thudded inside, followed by a scrape of a deadbolt. The door cracked open, revealing a gaunt man in his late 50s with dishevelled grey hair. His eyes were sharp, darting over Helena. "Harland Gray?" Helena asked, meeting his gaze. "I'm Helena Monroe. I'm investigating the disappearance of Mark Hawthorne." Gray's grip on the doorknob tightened. "Don't know him." Her instincts told her that wasn't true. She pulled out a copy of the old article about Evelyn Shaw. "He's been researching the Shaw case. Your name came up in his notes." For a moment, Gray said nothing. A flicker of recognition flashed in his eyes. Then he sighed. "You'd better come in." The interior was dim, the windows half covered with dusty blankets. Boxes of old files lined the walls, each labelled with dates and cryptic notes. A single lamp cast a weak glow on a cluttered table strewn with photos and typed reports. Helena spotted a black-and-white crime scene image of Evelyn Shaw. The parallels to Mark's photocopies were undeniable. Gray gestured for Helena to sit on a creaky wooden chair. He remained standing, arms folded. So, Mark Hawthorne is missing. He found me about a month ago, claiming he'd uncovered something about Shaw's murder. Helena leaned forward. What did he want? Gray glanced at a pile of papers on the table. He believed the same thing I did all those years ago. Someone inside the department wanted the Shaw case buried. He said he found a reference to a missing piece of evidence never logged into official records. A chill skittered across Helena's skin. What kind of evidence? Gray lowered his voice. An audio tape. Shaw made a phone call for help the night she was killed. But the tape was never entered into evidence. I argued with my superiors that it existed, but I was shut down, branded a conspiracy theorist. Helena thought of Mark's note. Something's off. Testimony changed. Any idea why Mark was so determined to dig this up? Gray hesitated. He hinted at a personal connection, but never said what it was. Just that he had to clear someone's name. Silence stretched between them. Helena's mind raced. Could Mark have stumbled on something about that audio tape? If so, it might explain why he was targeted or why he vanished. Look, Gray said, voice rough. I tried to help him, gave him my old notes, told him about certain ex-colleagues who might still talk off the record. That was the last time I saw him. You didn't think to report it? Helena pressed gently. He let out a bitter laugh. Report it to whom? The same force that ruined me? Shaking his head, he ran a hand through his unkempt hair. I've lived with regrets for years. The department shut me down because I believed a cop was involved in Shaw's murder, or at least complicit in covering it up. That revelation jolted Helena. A corrupt officer was hardly a new concept, but if one had a direct hand in a homicide and then suppressed evidence, that would be explosive. No wonder Gray had been forced out. No wonder Mark might be in danger. She studied Gray's anxious posture. I'm going to keep digging. If you think of anything else, call me. I suspect Mark may have confronted the wrong person with the wrong questions. Gray's hollow stare spoke volumes. He seemed like a decent kid, he murmured. I pray he's still alive. Before leaving, Helena asked if she could copy some of Gray's files. The man hesitated, then nodded. She snapped photos of documents referencing the missing audio tape and the potential involvement of an Officer M. The name was redacted in official records, but Gray believed it referred to a high-ranking cop. Outside, the cold afternoon air felt heavier. Helena's hidden instinct hummed, hinting at something dark lurking in the Shaw case. The mention of a corrupt officer forced her to recall her own FBI days, when refusing to toe the line had led her into countless confrontations. She hurried to her car, adrenaline surging. As she started the engine, she glimpsed Gray peering from the cabin window, a defeated silhouette haunted by regrets. Mark Hawthorne had apparently inherited that quest, a dangerous legacy. Now Helena was part of it too. Driving away, she couldn't shake the impression that they were onto something bigger than a single unsolved murder. If Mark had evidence proving official misconduct, it might unleash decades of pent-up secrets, and those responsible would do anything to keep it hidden. Chapter 4. Helena arrived back in the city with a restless energy coursing through her veins. As she maneuvered through traffic, her thoughts kept drifting to the mysterious Officer M. Could that be the linchpin connecting Mark's disappearance to the old Shaw murder? Determined to find answers, Helena headed straight to the local precinct. She needed Oscar Reed's help, and despite the friction from others in the department, He was usually willing to offer discreet support. The building's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she walked down the hall, ignoring sideways glances from passing uniformed officers. Oscar was waiting in a small interrogation room, arms folded, posture tense. "I've got 10 minutes," he said, shutting the door behind her. Helena placed her phone on the metal table. "I just spoke with Harland Gray. He mentioned a missing audio tape in the Evelyn Shaw case. Ever heard of Officer M?" Oscar's brow furrowed. "Not specifically, but let me guess. You think the missing tape implicates someone high up?" That's exactly what Gray suspected. Shaw apparently made a desperate call before she died, and the tape disappeared. If Mark was onto this, it could explain why he vanished. Oscar rubbed his chin, glancing at the door as if worried someone might overhear. "Look, I can try to look in the archives, but old cases, especially ones believed to be unsolvable, get minimal resources. If some big fish was involved, any incriminating file would have been destroyed or hidden." He tapped a pen against the tabletop. "I did manage to get a lead on Mark's last known location. Security footage from a convenience store shows him buying gas and snacks around 10 p.m. on the night he disappeared. He was heading east, which lines up with the direction of the old textile factory." Helena's mind flashed to the circled note on Mark's calendar. Factory. "So he may have gone to the factory that night," she said. "We have to check it out." Oscar looked uneasy. "That place was condemned years ago. It's basically a labyrinth of rusted machinery and debris. The city never got around to demolishing it. That's probably why Mark chose it. Less chance of running into anyone. But if he found something and was confronted..." Helena allowed the ominous scenario to hang in the air. Oscar sighed, pushing back from the table. "I'm off duty tonight. If you want an official search, you'll need a whole team, and the precinct's not exactly fond of your involvement." Helena gave a small, grateful nod. "I'll go alone if I have to. But if you can get me any inside backup, even unofficially, it could make a difference." He paused, conflicted. "All right. I might be able to get an officer I trust, someone who won't run straight to the brass. We can meet after midnight. Less chance of drawing attention." "Thank you," Helena said, her tension easing slightly. She turned to leave but paused at the door. "Oscar, if you find anything about Officer M, anything at all, let me know." He nodded, looking more worried than ever. "Be careful, Helena." Night descended fast. Back at her office, Helena spread out Gray's notes on a wide table, cross-referencing them with Mark's photocopies. Names of detectives, timestamps of evidence log entries, half-redacted reports. Many original files were missing or incomplete, which only fed Helena's suspicions of a deliberate cover-up. She worked methodically, the way she used to as an FBI profiler, separating fact from rumor, reconstructing a possible timeline. At one point, her eyes flickered, a ripple of dizziness. She gripped the edge of the table as a fleeting vision overtook her. Corridors of a derelict building, echoes of footsteps, the clang of metal on concrete, a sense of dread so thick it felt suffocating. Then, just as quickly, it vanished. She drew a shaky breath, her heart pounding. These visions were never crystal clear, but they were almost always relevant. It was as if her subconscious was piecing together the intangible details she had absorbed but hadn't logically connected yet. The clock read 11:30 p.m. She packed the notes, grabbed a flashlight, and headed out to meet Oscar near the condemned factory. Before stepping outside, she texted Caroline. "Following a lead on the factory. Don't worry, I'll keep you updated." She didn't mention that her next steps might be dangerous. No need to add to Caroline's distress. The streets were mostly empty at this hour, and a light drizzle slicked the pavement. By the time Helena reached the factory's chain-link fence, her breath was shallow, her nerves on high alert. She spotted Oscar's unmarked car parked discreetly across the road. He exited, accompanied by a younger officer, her face set in determined lines. Oscar introduced her quickly as Officer Mia Caldwell, someone he trusted. Caldwell gave Helena a respectful nod. "I'm not here officially," she said quietly, "but I believe in helping find this missing man. Let's do it." They navigated past the broken gate, stepping over twisted metal. The building loomed large, windows shattered, and walls streaked with graffiti. Rusty machinery remnants littered the grounds. A half-collapsed conveyor belt jutted out from the side like a broken spine. Helena felt her earlier vision resonate. Darkness, fear. She and the officers carefully scanned the perimeter with flashlights, searching for any sign of Mark. The wind whistled through gaping holes in the structure, creating an eerie moan. Footsteps echoed on the cracked concrete floors as they pushed deeper. She paused near a discarded tarp, shining her flashlight over it. Nothing. Further in, she nearly tripped over a piece of rotted wood. Her heart hammered in her chest. With each step, the tension mounted. They checked every corner, calling Mark's name in hushed tones, but only the echo responded. Then, near a rusted assembly line, Caldwell's voice cut the silence. "Over here!" She was crouched by a darkened area. Helena and Oscar rushed over to see what she'd found. A shattered phone, half buried in debris. Helena knelt, recognizing it from the photos Caroline had shown her. Mark's phone case had a distinctive sticker shaped like a guitar. A surge of hope and dread collided in Helena's chest. This confirmed he'd been here. But why had he dropped his phone? And where was he now? With shaking hands, she bagged the broken phone, her mind reeling. "This is Mark's," she whispered. "He might still be somewhere inside, or someone took him." Oscar exchanged a grim look with Caldwell. The walls seemed to close in around them, shadows lengthening as if to swallow their discovery. Helena rose to her feet, determined to search every inch of the factory. But a flicker of a flashlight revealed only endless corridors of rust and rubble. The place felt haunted, not just by time, but by the secrets it guarded. If Mark had found evidence tying an officer to a decades-old homicide, Helena feared he'd gotten too close. And if he'd gotten too close, who else was lurking in these dark corners, determined to keep the truth locked away? Chapter 5. They combed the main factory floor for another hour, methodically checking side rooms and rusted storage areas. Helena's clothes were smeared with dust and grime, her shoulders aching. Despite their thorough search, they found no sign of Mark other than the shattered phone. The building's hushed corridors seemed to mock them, offering no answers. Outside, the drizzle had intensified into a steady downpour. Finally, Oscar radioed a halt. "We've checked everything we can safely reach," he said. A section of the floor near the back had collapsed, making it impossible to explore deeper without specialized gear. Helena rubbed her temples. "He was definitely here. We should expand the search area tomorrow." Caldwell removed her flashlight batteries, trying to conserve power. "Agreed. But we'll need a better plan, and I can't guarantee my superiors will approve a full-scale search unless there's concrete evidence Mark's here." Helena nodded grimly. "Let's regroup for now. I'll figure out our next steps." They carefully retraced their route, exiting the factory. Lights from a nearby street lamp flickered, reflecting on the growing puddles. Before heading off, Helena paused by her car. "Thank you," she said to both officers. "I know this isn't exactly sanctioned." Oscar gave a weary smile. If Mark's in danger, the clock is ticking. Keep me posted. Caldwell handed Helena a slip of paper with her private number. Call me any time. I'm in, even if off the record. Once they left, Helena sank into the driver's seat, the pounding rain matching her internal turmoil. She felt a pull to do something more. Anything, but she was at a temporary dead end. She decided to drive home, gather her thoughts, and examine the broken phone in better light. Back in her apartment, she set the phone on her kitchen table. The screen was shattered beyond repair, but maybe a tech-savvy contact could recover data from the SIM card. She carefully wrapped it in a soft cloth, then tried to push the night's tension aside enough to rest. Sleep didn't come easily. Her mind churned with theories, conjuring Mark calling for help, muffled by the endless corridors. Eventually, Helena drifted into a restless doze. Then, in the middle of the night, she experienced one of her vivid dreams. She was standing in the factory's dark hallway, flashlight beam cutting through swirling dust. A single faint sound echoed footsteps. As she followed, the corridor seemed to stretch, walls closing in. Then, a door appeared on the left, partially ajar. A flickering light spilled out. Helena approached, heart pounding. On the floor lay an old cassette tape, stained with something dark. She heard a distant whisper. "Officer M, not an accident." But as she reached down to pick up the tape, a shadow loomed, slamming the door shut in her face. She bolted awake, heart racing, the image of that old cassette seared into her mind. She knew better than to dismiss these subconscious flashes. They often fused memory and insight in symbolic ways. The mention of Officer M in her dream and the tape's presence was no coincidence. It aligned perfectly with Gray's account of the missing audio recording, but she had no way to know if it was Mark's mind she was tapping into, or her own subconscious echoing Harland Gray's obsession. Pacing her bedroom, she tried to calm herself. Eventually, dawn light peeked through the curtains. She decided to skip more rest and proceed with the day's plan. Find someone who could possibly recover data from Mark's broken phone. By mid-morning, Helena was sitting in a small tech repair shop owned by Zane Park, a short, bespectacled whiz who had helped her in previous cases. He studied the phone's ruined motherboard under a magnifying lens. "This is pretty messed up," he muttered. "But I'll try to salvage what I can." Helena nodded. "Any clue how soon?" Zane shrugged. "A few hours if I'm lucky. I can at least see if the SIM or memory chip is intact." While Zane worked, Helena grabbed a coffee from a nearby kiosk and scrolled through her notes on Evelyn Shaw. She was only 22 when she died, the prime suspect never identified. Gray believed someone in the department intentionally sabotaged the case. Now Mark might have discovered a thread that could unravel the entire cover-up. The memory of her dream urged her to revisit the old precinct records. Perhaps an official log, altered or incomplete, could still contain hints about the missing tape's chain of custody. If Mark found a lead there, he may have confronted the wrong person. Or worse, that person found him first. Around noon, Zane emerged from the back room, holding a flash drive. Managed to extract partial data. He had some text messages, a few voice memos, and a list of phone calls. Videos are corrupted. Helena exhaled in relief. "That's great. Can I see it now?" She hurried to his workstation. Zane opened a folder containing a handful of files, text messages, some from Caroline, some from unknown numbers. A recent text from an unfamiliar contact read, "We need to meet. I have the tape." The date? The day Mark disappeared. Voice memo. Mark, speaking in a hushed tone, presumably in a car. Helena clicked play. His voice crackled, overshadowed by background noise. I'm close. Gray was right. It's not just one cop, it's a network. Meeting a source at the old factory tonight. Then a deafening static cut off the recording. Call logs, repeated calls to a burner phone could be the same source. No name, just random digits. Helena's pulse spiked. Mark's mention of a network was alarming. If multiple corrupt officers or affiliates were involved, this could be bigger than she had imagined. And someone claimed to actually have the missing tape, the one that documented Evelyn Shaw's final moments. She thanked Zane profusely and left with the flash drive. Outside, the streets bustled under a dreary sky. Helena's mind spun with possibilities. Mark arranged to meet someone at the factory who might have the tape. Did that person betray him? Or were they attacked too? Her phone buzzed. A text from Oscar. Any progress? She typed a rapid reply, summarizing the phone data. Then she added, Need to confirm who else could be behind this. Mark spoke of a network. Could be police or ex-police. Almost instantly, Oscar responded, We have to tread carefully. If it's bigger than we think, watch your back. Helena stared at the message, a knot tightening in her stomach. A conspiracy within law enforcement, perhaps old, but still lethal. She recalled the dream's door slamming shut, that looming shadow. The next steps were as risky as they were necessary. She had no intention of backing down. Not after coming this far, and certainly not when Mark's life might be on the line. Chapter 6. Helena spent the afternoon at her office, cross-referencing the partial phone data with her physical notes from Harland Gray. Caroline arrived unexpectedly, her face drawn with fear. Any updates on Mark? Caroline asked breathlessly, glancing around the cramped office space. Helena gestured for her to sit. We found his phone at the abandoned factory. It was badly damaged, but a friend recovered some data. Mark believed there was a missing audio tape that could blow open a cover-up. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. I had no idea. He never mentioned any of this, only that he was researching something for a class project. I thought it was about local history, not murder and corruption. Helena reached over and gripped Caroline's hand gently. He probably wanted to protect you, but we're on to something. I'll let you know as soon as we have a real lead on his location. Caroline nodded, her voice trembling. Just find him, please. Once Caroline left, Helena tried to think like a profiler. Mark's risk-taking behavior indicated he might have felt a moral obligation to expose the truth. If a clandestine group was involved, intimidation, or worse, would be their weapon of choice. Helena stepped back to her board of notes, where she'd pinned Mark's images, lines drawn to Evelyn Shaw's murder, and references to Officer M. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Helena Monroe. A distorted voice crackled on the line. I know you've been digging. Meet me at Lakeview Motel, room 12, midnight. Come alone, or there's no deal. Who is this? Helena asked, heart hammering. Someone who wants to see justice served, the voice replied. Then the call abruptly ended. Helena tried dialing back, but it went straight to voicemail. She typed a quick text to Oscar. Got a tip to meet at Lakeview Motel, midnight. Distorted voice. Could be Mark's source or a trap, Oscar replied moments later. Careful. I can't guarantee backup without spooking them. Helena understood. If she involved official law enforcement in an obvious way, the source might vanish. Or if the source was an officer trying to do the right thing covertly, they could face repercussions from higher-ups. She mulled over calling Caldwell, but decided to hold off unless things went sideways. Midnight approached quickly. The Lakeview Motel lay on the outskirts of the city. a dilapidated row of rooms with flickering neon signs. The view of the lake was more of a swampy lagoon, its waters reflecting the sallow moonlight. Helena parked near a broken lamppost and double-checked her concealed taser. She wasn't fond of firearms, but she believed in being prepared. Room 12 sat at the far end, its door peeling paint. She knocked twice. Silence. Then the door opened a crack, chain still hooked. "Come in," a muffled voice said. Slowly, she stepped inside. The blinds were drawn tight. A figure in a hoodie stood behind the bed, face partially hidden. They motioned to a small table lamp, which provided the only light. Helena's pulse raced. "You wanted to talk?" she asked. The voice was still slightly distorted, as though the speaker were masking it deliberately. "I heard you're looking for the missing tape from the Shaw case. I might know where it is." Helena kept her tone calm. "And Mark Hawthorne? Is he alive?" A flicker of hesitation. "I don't know. He was onto something big, bigger than just Shaw. The tape is leverage. It contains proof not only of who killed Evelyn Shaw, but of the officer who orchestrated the cover-up." Helena's breath hitched. "Then who are you? Why now?" The figure exhaled shakily. "I used to be on the force. Let's leave it at that. I saw things. People threatened me to keep quiet. But Mark, he was persistent. He found me, convinced me to come forward. Then he disappeared." A pang of hope sparked in Helena. "So you're trying to continue what Mark started. Are you the one who texted him, saying you had the tape?" A nod. "Yes. The tape exists, but I don't physically have it. It's hidden in a locker at the old West End storage facility. I was supposed to give Mark the key, but he never showed." The figure reached into a pocket, tossing a small envelope onto the bed. "The key and the locker number are inside. I can't do this anymore. It's too dangerous." Helena inched forward, picking up the envelope. Her heart pounded. This could be the break they needed. "I'll get it. But I need your help verifying it's real." The figure shook their head. "I've risked enough. Once you have the tape, you'll understand the danger. They have eyes everywhere." "They? Who exactly?" Helena began, but the hooded person raised a hand. "You already know. A network of corrupt cops and possibly bigger forces behind them. If you want Mark alive, you'll act fast. Once they find out you're after the tape, they'll come for you." Suddenly, footsteps sounded outside. The figure tensed. Helena's heart seized. With lightning speed, the figure shoved a slip of paper into Helena's hand. "Exit the back door. Now!" Helena raced to the bathroom. A grimy window led into an alley. She pushed it open, climbing out. Just as she slipped into the narrow lane, she heard the front door burst open, shouts in muffled tones. Then a single gunshot echoed through the room. She froze, heart pounding. Was the informant shot? She wanted to return and help, but footsteps raced toward the alley. Her adrenaline spiked. She dashed into the darkness, gripping the envelope with the key inside like a lifeline. Behind her, a shadowy figure emerged from the motel, scanning the alley. She pressed herself against the damp wall, inching away until she found an exit to the street. Once out of sight, she sprinted to her car, hands shaking so badly it took 2 tries to get the key in the ignition. She drove away, heart in her throat, trying to piece together what had just happened. That hooded informant might be dead, or captured. She had the locker key. Mark's life could depend on retrieving that tape. But now she had a dangerous enemy on her tail, someone who wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone threatening their hidden operation. Windshield wipers slapped against a sudden downpour as Helena navigated the slick roads back to the city. She glanced at the envelope on the passenger seat. Locker 381, West End Storage. She swore under her breath. She'd do whatever it took to save Mark, but she was in over her head and rapidly running out of time. Chapter 7. Helena drove home in a daze, headlights illuminating the torrent of rain. Once inside her apartment, she locked the door and double-checked the windows. She could still hear the echo of that gunshot, her heart thumping like a timpani. Clutching the envelope to her chest, she forced herself to think clearly. She retrieved the small key from its contents. A tiny brass piece with a tag reading 381. Along with it was a slip of paper scrawled with an address for West End Storage. No time like the present. But she also had to be strategic. Whoever chased her at the motel would guess she'd head straight for the storage locker. The place might be under surveillance. Still trembling, Helena called Detective Oscar Reed. It was late, but he answered. "Helena?" he asked, groggy yet alert. She outlined the motel incident in urgent detail. "I'm certain the informant was shot. I escaped with this locker key. If it holds the missing tape, it might prove who covered up Shaw's murder and where Mark is." Oscar took a moment to absorb her words. "We can't storm the storage facility. They'll anticipate that. But if we wait too long, they might move the tape." Helena exhaled shakily. "Exactly. We have to be subtle, or we risk losing the evidence altogether." They agreed to meet at a diner near West End Storage at dawn. Oscar would bring Caldwell. Helena ended the call and sat in silence, adrenaline still surging. Sleep was impossible. Her mind spiraled with scenarios of confrontation, escape, or betrayal. In the back of her thoughts, she found herself remembering Sarah Whitmore, how she'd been disregarded by the very institution meant to protect her. Helena vowed she wouldn't let Mark become another tragedy that haunted her nightmares. Morning arrived with a bleak sky. Helena parked behind the diner, exhaustion tugging at her. Inside, Oscar and Caldwell were seated in a corner booth, sipping coffee. She slid in next to them. Caldwell spoke first. "We got word from dispatch. A shooting at Lakeview Motel last night. 1 casualty. No ID yet. They're calling it a drug deal gone bad." She gave Helena a pointed look. Helena's stomach sank. "That's no coincidence. My informant is dead." Oscar's jaw tightened. "We have to be extremely careful. This is serious." They spread a map of West End's industrial district on the table. Caldwell pointed to an access road behind the storage compound. "We can slip in there. I have a buddy who can tweak security camera angles for a small window of time." Helena nodded, grateful. "Let's get in and out. I don't want to risk a firefight." Oscar cleared his throat. "What if the tape reveals names? We'll be exposing a nest of corrupt officers who might still have allies in key positions. We'll need to handle that fallout." Helena clasped her hands around her coffee cup. "First things first, secure the tape, verify Mark's location, then bring it all into the light. We'll figure out the rest as we go." They reached West End Storage just before noon. A chain-link fence surrounded rows of identical garages, each with a sliding metal door. The entrance booth stood empty, a single security camera mounted at the gate. Caldwell called her contact, who confirmed the cameras would malfunction for roughly 10 minutes. They had to move fast. They parked in an alley behind the facility, scaled a low section of fence, and quickly located Unit 381. Helena's pulse thudded as she inserted the key. The door groaned on its tracks, revealing a dim interior lit only by streaks of daylight through narrow vents. Inside, the unit was largely empty. A single wooden crate and a battered metal filing cabinet sat against one wall. Dust motes swirled in the stale air. Oscar and Caldwell kept watch at the entrance, while Helena stepped forward, scanning for anything that might contain a cassette tape. She pried open the filing cabinet drawers. They were mostly empty, just some old envelopes and a few receipts. Then she examined the wooden crate. The lid was loose, so she slid it aside. Within was a small lockbox. Her fingers shook as she tried to lift it. Locked. Caldwell approached. "Hang on." She took a thin pry bar from her jacket pocket, standard issue for forced entry in certain police operations. She wedged it under the box's lid, applying pressure until the latch snapped. Helena opened it carefully, heart hammering. Inside lay a single cassette tape in a clear plastic case labelled E. Shaw, 2003. Next to it was a folded slip of paper with scrawled handwriting. "If anything happens to me, give this to H.G." Helena recognized the initials for Harland Gray. The tape looked old, the edges scuffed, her breath caught. This must be it. The missing audio. Oscar hovered, anxiety etched on his features. "Let's hear it." They spotted a dusty tape recorder in the corner of the storage unit. Caldwell popped in fresh batteries from her flashlight. Helena's hands trembled as she inserted the tape. She pressed play, static crackling through the speaker. Then came a frantic female voice. "Help! I'm at the factory. I think he followed me. He's... Officer..." More static. "He said I can't..." A male voice in the background, distant but audible. "Evelyn, listen. We can work this out. Don't make me do this." Then a scream. The tape cut to muffled thumps, possibly a struggle. The male voice was clearer now, trembling with anger. "You had to push it, huh? Thought you could go around me. You know what happens next." The recording ended in a burst of white noise. Silence gripped them all. Helena felt a chill claw up her spine. Evelyn Shaw was calling for help. Someone from the department cornered her. The voice belonged to a man, but not enough to identify. However, the tape proved beyond doubt that a police officer had confronted her, and likely killed her. Caldwell breathed. "My God, this changes everything." Oscar's expression was grim. "This is evidence of first-degree murder, plus a departmental cover-up. If they realize we have it, we become targets." Suddenly, the rumble of an engine outside jerked their attention. Through the narrow gap of the storage door, Helena saw a black SUV pull in. 2 men in plain clothes jumped out, armed. Instinctively, Oscar yanked the door shut. Caldwell slid the padlock back in place, hoping they could buy a moment of confusion. Helena stuffed the tape in her jacket pocket, searching for an escape route. A tiny door at the back of the unit led to a service corridor. Caldwell jimmied it open, and they slipped out into a narrow alley behind the row of units. Shots rang out from the main driveway. Bullets ricocheted off metal. Fear jolted Helena's body, but she forced herself to remain calm. She clutched the tape, heart pounding. If the men reached them, it might be over for all of them, and for Mark. They fled down the alley, hugging the walls, making for the fence. Adrenaline surged as they scaled it. Once on the other side, they sprinted to their car. The black SUV roared around the corner, tires screeching, but they managed to peel away first. Helena drove with white-knuckled speed, weaving through side streets until they finally lost pursuit. Chest heaving, Helena risked a glance at Oscar and Caldwell. They looked as rattled as she felt, but also determined. The tape was in her pocket, still intact. Evelyn Shaw's final moments were no longer just a rumour. They had proof of a murder, proof an officer was involved. And if Mark truly discovered the same truth, he was in mortal danger. Chapter 8. The trio reconvened in an underground parking garage connected to Oscar's apartment complex. Heartbeats finally slowing, they stepped out of the car. The adrenaline rush left Helena's limbs trembling, but she forced herself to stay alert. Oscar ran a hand through his hair. "I can't believe this. We just got shot at." Caldwell leaned against a concrete pillar, catching her breath. "They were definitely waiting for us. Means someone's monitoring the locker or the informant's phone. They knew we'd be there." Helena held up the tape. "We need to keep this safe and figure out how to expose the truth without getting killed. If these are dirty cops, they have resources. They also might know where Mark is." She glanced around the dimly lit garage, mindful of every echo. "Oscar, you know the channels better than I do. Is there anyone high up we can trust?" He hesitated. "Maybe Captain Russell. She's old school and hates corruption. But we have to confirm she's clean. If we give her the tape and she's compromised, we'll be handing it right back to them." Caldwell frowned. "And if she's not compromised, she might want to go by the book, confiscate the tape, open an investigation. That could take time Mark doesn't have." Helena understood the dilemma. A direct approach risked red tape, or the possibility their safe contact was, in fact, part of the cover-up. They needed a strategic move, one that forced the corruption into the spotlight while protecting Mark. She thought about Harland Gray. The tape slip mentioned giving it to him if anything happened. He might be able to release it to the public or the press. But would that guarantee Mark's safety? She rummaged in her car's trunk, pulling out a portable cassette-to-digital converter she sometimes used for old case files. Setting it up on the back seat, she transferred the tape's contents to a secure flash drive. Now they had at least one digital copy. "We should make multiple copies," she said. "Distribute them to trusted people. So if something happens to us, the evidence isn't lost." Oscar agreed, rummaging in his phone's contact list. He tapped a message to a journalist friend, attaching a code phrase. "Just in case," he said quietly. "I'll have her on standby." They relocated to Helena's office after verifying no one was tailing them. It was evening by the time they arrived, stomachs growling, nerves frayed. The tension in the small space was palpable. Helena set the tape and the flash drive on her desk. "Where do we go from here?" Oscar paced. "We need Mark. He's the only one who can fill in the missing pieces, like who specifically is behind this. The voice on the tape is too distorted to identify. We need Mark's notes, and we need him alive." Caldwell crossed her arms. "What about Harland Gray? He might know the officer's identity. He was investigating this for years." Helena grimaced. "Right. Gray mentioned suspecting a higher-up. Officer M. Maybe he had a name. He told me he'd share more if I found real proof. Well, we have it now." They decided to call Gray. Helena dialed his number and let it ring. No answer. She left a voicemail. "Harland, we found the tape. We need your help, urgently. Please call me back." After hanging up, Helena couldn't shake a nagging anxiety. What if something had happened to Gray too? If Mark had reached him and discovered the officer's identity, that might have spelled doom for both of them. Determined not to wait, Helena said, "I'm going to his cabin. Oscar, Caldwell. If either of you want to come, I'd appreciate the backup. But it's a risk." Oscar glanced at Caldwell. She nodded. "Let's do it." Night had fallen by the time they made the drive to Cedar Lake. The roads were even darker than before, the forest closing in like a silent sentinel. When they arrived, the cabin's windows were dark, the pickup truck still parked out front. Helena's unease intensified. She knocked on the door. No answer. Gently she tried the knob. It was unlocked. Oscar flicked on a flashlight. illuminating a small living room as they stepped inside. Immediately, Helena sensed something was off. Papers were strewn across the floor, chairs overturned. "Gray?" she called. No response. They carefully searched. In the back room, they found him. Harland Gray, slumped against the wall, unconscious but breathing. A gash on his forehead trickled blood. Caldwell knelt beside him, checking vitals. "He's alive," she said, relief in her voice. Gray stirred at the sound of their voices, eyes fluttering open. "Ugh. What?" He winced in pain, rubbing his head. They came." "Who?" Helena asked urgently, helping him sit up. Gray groaned, trying to focus. "Couple of men. Maybe cops, maybe not. They wanted my files. The second I refused, they knocked me out." He peered at Helena through bleary eyes. "Did you get the tape?" Helena nodded. "We have it. We need you to name the officer. The voice on the recording is distorted, but you must have suspected someone." Gray swallowed hard, pressing a hand to his forehead. "I was never sure, but the biggest lead pointed to an officer named Mitchell Kane, a lieutenant back then, rumored to have powerful connections. He vanished from public records after Shaw's murder. I tried to warn the brass, but no one believed me. Then my career ended." Oscar and Caldwell exchanged a glance. "Mitchell Kane," Oscar repeated. "I've heard whispers. He's on some special security detail now, possibly even private contracting. No official trace in the department anymore, but he's around." Gray struggled to his feet, leaning on Helena. "That's him, Officer M. If Mark found proof Kane was behind Shaw's death, and maybe deeper corruption, Kane would stop at nothing to silence him." Caldwell helped Gray into a chair, offering a bottle of water. "So we have a name. Now what? Do we find Kane directly?" Helena's thoughts raced. "We know Kane's people got here before us. They probably took Gray's remaining files. They'll be hunting for the tape. And Mark." Gray's face twisted in pain, both physical and emotional. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect Mark," he said. "He came to me for clarity, for leads. I never expected them to act this swiftly, this brutally." Helena set a hand on his shoulder. "We'll handle it now. Get some medical attention. We might need your testimony soon." Before leaving, Helena, Oscar, and Caldwell searched the cabin for anything salvageable. Most of Gray's files were gone, but a few scraps remained, referencing addresses linked to Kane's name. One address stood out: a remote warehouse near the waterfront, scribbled with a note. Night deliveries? As they stepped outside into the chill night air, Helena felt a grim resolve taking hold. The puzzle pieces were clicking into place. Mitchell Kane, a former cop with the power to bury evidence, might be running an under-the-radar operation. If Mark tried confronting him or was lured into a trap, that warehouse could be where he was taken, or where they stashed him. Oscar checked the time, nearly midnight. "That warehouse might be the best place to look," he said quietly. "But it's dangerous." Caldwell's jaw tensed. "We've come this far. If Mark's alive, he's out of time." Helena nodded, adrenaline spiking. "Let's go." They left Harland Gray at the cabin, urging him to call for medical help and stay hidden. Driving back through the darkened roads, Helena's grip on the steering wheel was as tight as her determination. Evelyn Shaw's voice on the tape still echoed in her mind, a plea from beyond the grave. "Don't make me do this." Mitchell Kane's sinister words. The same cruelty could be unleashed on Mark, or worse. Her instincts flared. She felt the same sense of foreboding that usually preceded a breakthrough or a tragedy. This time, she promised herself, no matter how reckless it seemed, she would push forward. The moment they hesitated might be the moment Mark's fate was sealed. Chapter 9. Under the cover of darkness, Helena, Oscar, and Caldwell arrived at the waterfront district. It was a sprawling maze of old warehouses and shipping containers, the faint stench of salt and rotting fish clinging to the air. The address from Gray's Scraps led them to a large metal building with faded lettering, long abandoned according to city records. They parked a block away, slipping down an alley, hearts pounding in unison. A single dim light above a side entrance hinted at occupancy. Faint shadows moved across the windows. Caldwell whispered, "This could be it." Oscar checked his sidearm. "If Kane's inside with Mark, we'll have to move carefully." Helena's breath trembled. She had no official gear, just her taser and flashlight. The memory of that gunshot at the motel flashed in her mind. Fear was a reminder to stay cautious, but she couldn't let it paralyze her. She nodded at Oscar, who quietly led the way. They circled the building, spotting a partially open loading bay. The interior glowed with pale overhead lights. Through a gap, Helena could see stacks of wooden crates and a couple of men in dark clothing, armed and standing guard. She ducked down before they noticed. Oscar signaled a plan. He and Caldwell would create a diversion at the main entrance, drawing the guards away, while Helena slipped in to find Mark. She knew it was risky, but time was running out. They quickly synchronized their watches. Then Helena crept around to a side door as Oscar and Caldwell stepped out of hiding, shouting challenges to lure the guards. A burst of voices echoed. "Freeze! Police!" Caldwell called. Gunfire erupted in response, sharp blasts reverberating through the cavernous space. Helena's adrenaline skyrocketed. She used the chaos to pry open the side door and slip inside. The corridor stretched into darkness, lined with old offices. Clutching her flashlight, she moved stealthily, peering into each room. Most were empty or packed with musty boxes. Fear churned in her stomach. Mark could be anywhere. More gunshots resonated from afar. She prayed Oscar and Caldwell would handle themselves. At last, she found a room with a single overhead lamp flickering. Inside, slumped against a chair, was Mark Hawthorne. His wrists were bound, face bruised, eyes half closed. Helena's heart seized. She rushed to his side, checking his pulse. Weak but alive. "Mark! Mark, can you hear me?" She whispered urgently, tugging at the bindings with trembling fingers. He stirred, letting out a faint groan. She managed to free him, though his hands were raw and bleeding from the ropes. He blinked, disoriented, then relief flooded his gaze. "You found me. We're getting you out of here. Can you walk?" He nodded weakly, leaning on her for support. They moved to the door. Just as Helena stepped into the hallway, a tall figure appeared, Mitchell Kane. She recognized him instantly from Gray's partial descriptions. Tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing eyes that radiated cold intensity. He held a handgun leveled at them. "So you're the meddling PI?" Kane said, voice dripping with disdain. "Put the kid down. He's not leaving." Helena's heart pounded. She slid Mark behind her, one hand steadying her taser in her jacket pocket. "He's coming with me," she said, voice surprisingly steady. Kane sneered. "You think you can stop this? You have no idea the power behind me. It's not just me. It's a system that's been in place long before you or Hawthorne came poking around." His words confirmed Helena's worst fears. A network of corruption, protected by heavy hitters. But she couldn't focus on the bigger conspiracy right now. She had to get Mark out alive. Her eyes flickered to the gun. She tried to read Kane's stance, searching for an opening. "I have evidence Evelyn Shaw's tape. It's going public." A muscle in Kane's jaw twitched. "You have nothing. Even if you do, it'll never see the light of day. You're about to disappear like the rest." He stepped closer, finger tensing on the trigger. Helena calculated the distance, maybe 10 feet. If she lunged with the taser, he'd still have time to shoot. Her mind raced. Distract him. Just enough to buy a second. She gritted her teeth. "Is that what happened to Evelyn Shaw? You made her disappear because she knew too much?" Kane's sneer wavered, revealing a flicker of rage. "She was blackmailing us, threatening to go to internal affairs with a story she couldn't prove. She forced my hand. That was all Helena needed. A confession, however brief." She inched her hand further inside her jacket pocket, gripping the taser handle. "And Mark," she said, voice laced with quiet fury. "He was just trying to do the right thing." A faint scuffle from behind Kane drew his attention, Oscar and Caldwell, presumably. Sensing the moment, Helena yanked out the taser and fired. The prongs hit Kane's torso. He convulsed, gun arm jerking upward as he squeezed off a wild shot. The bullet shattered a ceiling light, raining sparks. Kane collapsed to the floor, body trembling under the electric current. Helena's ears rang from the gunshot, but she wasted no time. She grabbed Mark's arm and half-carried him down the corridor. As they emerged into the loading bay, she saw Oscar and Caldwell exchanging fire with 2 men near a stack of crates. Kane's men retreated under the onslaught, seeing their boss incapacitated. Soon, the place erupted in chaotic footsteps. Some of Kane's associates fleeing into the night. Oscar hurried over, relief shining in his eyes. "You got him!" he shouted, helping support Mark. Caldwell kept her gun trained on the corridor, ensuring no one else rushed them. "Let's move!" Caldwell yelled. They guided Mark outside to a waiting squad car Caldwell had arranged with a trusted dispatcher. The driver, also an ally, gunned the engine as they clambered in. Back in the safety of the vehicle, Helena clutched Mark's hand. His breathing was ragged, eyes closing from sheer exhaustion. But he was alive, rescued from Kane's brutal captivity. The swirling red and blue lights from the squad car's hidden beacon illuminated the harrowing scene behind them. As they sped away, Helena finally allowed herself a moment of triumph. They had Mark. They had the tape. Now the real fight began, ensuring these bastions of corruption were exposed, no matter how powerful they were. Chapter 10. The aftermath unfolded over the next 48 hours with dizzying speed. Mark was rushed to a hospital, treated for dehydration, bruises, and a fractured rib. Doctors said he'd recover with rest. Oscar and Caldwell, determined to make the charges stick, wasted no time coordinating with Captain Russell, a high-ranking official known for her integrity. Helena joined them at the precinct for a confidential meeting. Russell listened intently as they described the recovered tape, the rescue of Mark, and the shootout at the warehouse. Shock rippled across her features, but she remained resolute. "We'll need sworn statements and a chain of custody for that tape," she said. "And we'll need to move quickly. If you're right about a network, they'll try to bury this." Helena handed over a copy of the recording, then gave her statement. Memories of her FBI days tugged at her, reminding her how easily a department could turn against anyone who challenged the status quo. But Russell's earnest determination gave her hope. Within hours, an internal investigation was launched. Multiple officers with connections to Mitchell Kane faced immediate suspension, pending further questioning. Kane himself, still reeling from the taser jolt, was taken into custody. Helena learned from Caldwell that he'd lawyered up and was refusing to speak. But the tape, combined with Mark's testimony, might be enough to break the case wide open. By the third day, the media frenzy erupted. News outlets reported on a mysterious cassette tape implicating a high-ranking ex-officer in an unsolved murder. They hinted at broader police corruption, fueling public outcry. Helena watched from the sidelines, carefully avoiding the limelight. As a private investigator, she had no official standing to hold press conferences, but her phone buzzed non-stop with requests for comment. She turned them all down, opting instead to visit Mark. At his hospital room, Caroline sat by her brother's bedside, relief etched on her face. Mark's eyes brightened when Helena entered. "Hey," he said softly, voice still hoarse from stress. "Thanks for everything." Helena nodded, pulling a chair close. "We're not done yet, but you're safe. That's what matters." Caroline brushed a tear from her cheek. "He told me how he found clues about Evelyn Shaw's case, thinking it might tie into shady dealings at his security job. He never imagined it would get so dangerous." Mark offered a wry smile. "I just wanted to do the right thing, expose what happened to that poor woman, I thought. Maybe I could redeem myself for my past mistakes." Helena laid a comforting hand on his arm. "You've done more than that. Because of you, we might finally get justice for Evelyn Shaw. And we've exposed a ring of corrupt forces who thought they were untouchable." Caroline squeezed Mark's hand. "Thank you, Helena. You saved his life." Later that evening, Helena sat alone in her office, taking a rare moment to catch her breath. The tape, now secured as evidence, was no longer her responsibility. Mitchell Kane's arrest had sent shockwaves through the department. Several officers had already started cooperating with investigators to reduce their own liability. It would be a long legal battle, but the truth was out. A gentle knock on the door startled her. She looked up to see Harland Gray. A bandage still adorned his forehead, but his eyes shone with cautious optimism. "May I come in?" "Of course." Helena stood, offering him a seat. "How are you feeling?" He gave a half-smile. "A headache the size of Texas, but also relieved. You did what I couldn't do for 2 decades. Thank you." Helena shook her head. "We all had a part, and you never gave up on the truth." Gray pulled out a faded photograph, a younger Evelyn Shaw smiling, with scribbled notes on the back. "I kept this all these years," he said quietly. "I used to blame myself for failing her. But now, maybe her family can have closure." Helena gently placed her hand on the picture. "She can rest in peace, knowing her killer's facing justice." Gray nodded, eyes misty. "What about you? Will you stick around, keep digging into corruption?" Helena offered a small smile. "I go where the cases take me. There's always more to uncover, more people who need help. But for now, I'll let the official wheels of justice turn." They parted with mutual respect. Helena felt a rare sense of closure, but also the familiar undercurrent of possibility. One case rarely ended neatly, always leaving ripples in its wake. Before midnight, Helena received a call from Captain Russell. "Kane just flipped," the captain said, her voice resonating with excitement. "He's naming names in exchange for a reduced sentence. We're looking at a major corruption bust." Helena exhaled. "That's incredible. Good luck." She set down her phone, the city lights glowing outside her window. A swirl of emotions took hold: satisfaction at saving Mark, justice for Evelyn Shaw, and a lingering unease about the powerful connections Kane might reveal. It all reminded her that the line between the righteous and the corrupt can be perilously thin, even within the institutions meant to protect. In the quiet of her office, she allowed herself a moment of introspection. The Sarah Whitmore case still haunted her, But each success helped ease the old scars, proving that if she trusted her instincts and refused to be silenced, she could change the fate of victims who'd otherwise be forgotten. A gentle breeze ruffled the papers on her desk. Helena rose and walked to the window, gazing at the flickering skyline. Mark was safe. Evelyn Shaw's killer was exposed, and a nest of corruption was about to be uprooted. She felt a new current of energy, the promise of more mysteries yet to come. This city had its ghosts, but so did she, and tonight they felt just a little more at peace. End of chapter and end of story. Like and subscribe to support our channel and listen to more crime stories and murder mysteries.